"You're fired! Effective immediately!" Those were the words Maria heard, standing in the marble lobby, still holding the old man's trembling hand. She didn't know that man was about to change her life, or that in exactly 6 days, the same manager who fired her would be standing outside her door, begging for forgiveness. If you believe in kindness and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Grandpa's Story Chair. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're joining us from tonight. Tell me in the comments which country you're watching from, and what city. I read every single one, and it means more than you know. Now, let's go back to where it all started. Maria Delgado was 43 years old, and for the past 6 years, she had cleaned the offices of Holloway Tower in downtown Chicago every night, from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. She lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment on the west side, the kind with a radiator that clanked twice before it finally warmed up. Her daughter, Sophia, was 17, studying hard for a scholarship she desperately needed. Because there was no other way Maria could afford college tuition on $14.50 an hour. Every night, Maria pushed her cart down the same silent hallways, floor 12, then 14, then the executive suite on 30. She emptied trash cans, wiped desks, vacuumed carpets that cost more per square foot than her monthly rent. She never complained. She hummed old songs her mother used to sing back in Guadalajara, and sometimes she left little sticky notes on employees' desks, small things like, "Have a great day," or "You've got this," signed only with a smiley face. Nobody ever asked her name. Nobody, except one man. His name was Arthur Whitfield. He was 78 years old, and every Tuesday and Thursday, he sat alone on the bench in the lobby around 11 p.m., wearing a plain gray coat, always the same worn brown shoes. Maria assumed he was a retired security guard, or maybe someone's grandfather waiting for a ride that never seemed to come on time. She started bringing him tea from the break room, sometimes a sandwich, if she had extra. She'd sit with him for 10 minutes on her break, listening to him talk about his late wife, about a company he used to run a long, long time ago, and about how much the city had changed. "You remind me of someone," he told her once, smiling faintly. "Someone who mattered to me." Maria never asked who. She had no idea that the plain gray coat belonged to a man worth $9 billion, and that 6 days from now, that fact would collide violently with her simple, quiet life. It was a Thursday night in November when everything changed. Maria arrived at 9 p.m. as usual, but the lobby felt different, tense, buzzing. Security guards stood stiffer than normal. A black car with tinted windows was parked directly outside the entrance, engine still running. She found Arthur on his usual bench, but something was wrong. He was pale, one hand pressed against his chest, breathing shallow and uneven. "Mr. Arthur?" Maria dropped her cart and rushed to him. "Are you okay? Talk to me." "My heart," he whispered. "It's happened before. I just need a minute." Without thinking, Maria pulled out her phone and called 911. She sat beside him, holding his hand, keeping him talking, keeping him calm, the way she used to do for her own father before he passed. That's when Janet Cole, the building's operations manager, came storming through the lobby. "Delgado, what are you doing? You are not paid to sit around chatting with visitors. You're on the clock." "He's having a medical emergency," Maria said. "I already called for help." "That's not your job. Get back to your cart. Now." But Maria didn't move. She stayed beside Arthur until the paramedics arrived 4 minutes later, helping them lift him onto the stretcher, squeezing his hand one last time before they wheeled him out. Janet watched the entire thing with her arms crossed. The next night, when Maria clocked in, security stopped her at the door. "I'm sorry, Maria," the young guard said, avoiding her eyes. "You're not on the list anymore." "What? What list?" Janet appeared behind him, holding a clipboard. "You were terminated this morning. Unauthorized fraternizing with a building visitor, abandoning your assigned duties, creating a liability issue for the company. I warned you before." "He was having a heart attack," Maria said, her voice cracking. "I couldn't just leave him." "That's not our concern," Janet said flatly. "Turn in your badge." Maria stood in the cold outside Holloway Tower that night, badge in her coat pocket, $14.50 an hour gone. No severance, no warning, just gone. She thought about Sophia's tuition. She thought about rent due in 9 days. She had no idea that 70 miles away, in a hospital room on the 9th floor, Arthur Whitfield had just opened his eyes, and the very first thing he asked his assistant was, "Where is she? Where is the woman who stayed with me?" And when his assistant finally told him what had happened at Holloway Tower that morning, Arthur Whitfield, founder and majority shareholder of Whitfield Holdings, net worth $9 billion, sat up in his hospital bed and said one sentence that would change everything. "Get me Janet Cole on the phone. Now." 6 days later, Maria was sitting at her kitchen table, sorting through unpaid bills, when someone knocked on her apartment door. She opened it to find a young man in a sharp black suit. "Mrs. Delgado? My name is David Chen. I'm Mr. Whitfield's personal assistant. He'd like to see you. Today, if possible." Maria frowned. "Whitfield? I don't know any—" "Arthur Whitfield," David said gently. "The man from the lobby bench." Maria's stomach dropped. "The man who had the heart attack? Is he all right?" "He's better, and he's been asking for you every day since he woke up." Maria didn't understand any of it, not until the car pulled up outside Holloway Tower, and not until she walked through the same lobby doors she'd been escorted out of 6 days earlier, and not until the elevator doors opened onto the 40th floor executive suite, where a nameplate on the glass door read, "Arthur Whitfield, founder and chairman Whitfield Holdings." Maria froze in the doorway. You own this building." Arthur, sitting in a wheelchair by the window, smiled softly. "I own the company, Maria. Every floor, every desk you've cleaned for 6 years, but you were just sitting on a bench in an old coat." "Because nobody ever looks twice at an old man in a gray coat," Arthur said. "But you did. You brought me tea. You listened to me talk about my wife. You never once asked what I could do for you." Just then, the door opened, and Janet Cole walked in, clutching a folder, clearly summoned and clearly confused until she saw Maria standing there. "Mr. Whitfield, Sit down, Janet." Arthur's voice was calm, but iron underneath. "I asked HR to pull the termination report. It says Mrs. Delgado was fired for, and I quote, unauthorized fraternizing with a building visitor." "Sir, protocol states that visitor," Arthur said, "was me. And she saved my life while you stood there worrying about protocol." The room went silent. "You're terminated, Janet. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out the same way you escorted her." Janet's face went white. She looked at Maria, opened her mouth, then said nothing at all, and walked out. Arthur turned back to Maria, his eyes soft. "I'd like to offer you a position, Maria. Not cleaning floors, running the new community foundation I'm building in this city. Full salary, full benefits, and full tuition coverage for Sophia, wherever she gets in." Maria's hands were shaking. "Mr. Arthur, I didn't help you for any of this." "I know," he said quietly. "That's exactly why you deserve it. There was no big party, no dramatic press conference, no headlines, just a quiet Tuesday morning, 3 weeks later, when Maria walked into a small office on the 12th floor of Holloway Tower, the very floor she used to clean at midnight, and sat down at her own desk for the first time. She still hummed the same songs her mother used to sing. She still left little sticky notes for people, only now they said things like, "Welcome to the foundation," instead of, "Have a great day." Sophia got into her first choice university that spring, tuition paid in full. And every Thursday evening, Maria still visits Arthur not because she has to, but because somewhere along the way, an old man on a lobby bench became family. Janet Cole, as far as anyone knows, never worked in this city's corporate offices again. Word travels fast when a company chairman personally signs your termination letter. Here's what this story really teaches us. Kindness was never supposed to be transactional. Maria didn't sit with Arthur because she thought he might be powerful. She sat with him because he was a person, alone, in pain, and that was enough of a reason for her. The world will always have people like Janet, people who see rules before they see human beings. But it will also always have people like Maria, people who see the human being first and worry about the consequences later. That is the kind of person the world needs more of. And maybe, if we're lucky, It's the kind of person each of us can choose to be, one small act at a time. If this story touched your heart, please leave a like and share it with someone who still believes kindness matters. And before you go, comment below. Kindness still exists if you believe even one good act can change someone's life.